Should the Cardinals bring in both Josh Sweat and Milton Williams? I'll tell you what, if they do, they'll be a top 10 defense. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On Easy Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Going into my 9th season hosting this podcast. Unbelievable. I'll tell you what, this is going to be the most fun. Last year was the most exciting because we're finally starting to see them come back into relevancy. Everybody was healthy before the season started. And that was the most exciting season for me. This is going to be the most fun. And fun in the sense of one of two things are going to happen. One, Kyler Murray is going to have an all-world year. The Cardinals defense is going to be top 10, and the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game or two. That's one thing that could happen. The other side that will be fun is you're going to be looking for a brand new quarterback, a brand new offensive coordinator, and nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, which is always fun. You got to live in the chaos, man, especially if you cover like I, or, you're a fan of like you, a team like the Arizona Cardinals. You got to just soak in the chaos because that's really all this is. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked In Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Josh Sweat and Milton Williams are looked to be two of the bigger name free agents this offseason. We're about a week away from free agency. Going to put the rest of the Fix the Arizona Cardinals on hold for a moment, and we're going to talk trades. We're going to talk signings. We're going to talk it all. It's going to be fun for the next week for sure. One thing is clear. The Cardinals have one of the highest retention rates for their, from last year to this year, with players who are on the roster and a top 5 cap space situation, which means that is a perfect situation for Monti Ossenfort to spend a lot of money on big name talent. And big name talent doesn't just mean, oh, this is a household name. No. Big name talent is different for each organization, for each roster, for each side of the ball, inside each of those, organizations. And for the Cardinals, they need defensive tackle help and they need pass rush help. And if both guys are looking for a situation where it's like, oh man, good offense, defense is just a me away, crazier things have happened. Now, do I think both of them are going to sign with the Arizona Cardinals? Probably not. But the Cardinals have been tied to Josh Sweat more than any other team. He's got the history with JG, just won a Super Bowl. That's when teams disband a large portion of the time. Not a large, a good portion of the time. It's like, all right, got my ring. I'm going to go get paid. And I don't think either of these guys, Josh Sweat 27, Milton Williams 26, are in any sort of danger of, if you give this guy a lot of money, he's on the tail end of his career. No. These guys are in their absolute bona fide prime. And from what we've learned from Monti Ossenfort, even though he hasn't brought in a big name yet, is they love the 3-year deals that are really 2-year deals with a team option to either restructure, let go, or whatever it is. They love those deals. And I find, and what we collectively as football fans, in my opinion, will see a lot more of, are more of those deals instead of the 5-year, $140 million, $90 million, or $100 million guaranteed. Because not only does it benefit the organization more because they're not paying that kind of cheese up front, more of a J.J. Watt deal than a Christian Wilkins deal, or a Myles Garrett deal that he got like 3 contracts ago, a Von Miller deal that he got with Buffalo, even though a lot of it was with escalators. He got a lot of cheese there. It not only benefits the organization in the sense that it's shorter term, and if it goes well, you just James Conner it, you do it again. It also benefits the player because after 2 years, they could go find other money somewhere else if it doesn't work out. So it doesn't get ugly. And I feel like with that structure that Monti Ossenfort has had in place since coming over a couple of years ago, it could yield a situation where the Cardinals could afford to sign both of them. And this is what I do on this show. I bring, in my opinion, rational, for the most part, opportunities to think about what could be for the Cardinals. And this, while bringing over two guys from the same team and the same free agency after they just won a Super Bowl, doesn't happen often. It could. And with how Monti Ossenfort structures his contracts, it could. And it wouldn't break the bank. It doesn't. And this is one thing, and I've said this earlier in the last 2 weeks, I've said this. Let's open up our minds to all possibilities and not worry, well, oh no, he's going to want 18 million when you want somebody who's going to make, he's only 15 million and he's not going to stop. Soak in the chaos. Monti Ossenfort has things under control. And they've got the money. And this, another fun thing. This is another fun thing, adding to the list that I did earlier. Another fun thing is we're really going to find out. And it's not because he's been the owner for 15 years, whatever it is, taking over, whatever, in what faction he was when his dad was still alive with Michael Bidwell. We're going to find out if he's ever going to spend money. I know he gave Kyler Murray a whole bunch of cheese. I know that. He gave Larry Fitzgerald triple what anybody else would have given him for years that, handcuffed the team, but nobody talked about that. We're not going to talk about that. Is he going to go spend the money necessary to elevate this team from an 8-win team to a potential NFC West crowning team? Is he going to do it? And that is what makes this the most fun. Because if he doesn't, we collectively, you and I, will never have to question if he cares more about winning than his bottom line. Because it's been up for question over the last 2 years, when you have to give him credit, all of his downsides, all of his, alleged terrible workplace, antics, not to put it lightly, like the ongoing allegations and things like that. Like, putting that aside, because this is a football show and I will talk about it from time to time, but I'm focusing on football. He's done everything he said he was going to do since getting rid of the last regime. He has. That's just a fact. He has. This is the offseason where he really puts his feet to the fire and says, you know what? Giddy up. Go pay him. Go pay him. Go pay him. Go pay him. And you look at this team, if they bring in Josh Sweat and Milton Williams with that structure that Monti Ossenfort has held near and dear to his heart since becoming GM, is the short-term deals. It's possible. And if they do bring them in, the Cardinals are a top 10 defense. Like that. With the draft coming, come on. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Should the Cardinals sign the recently released Gardner Minshew? Before you groan, let me explain next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by a new sponsor of ours, Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. AutoShip is a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials so you never run out. You can easily change or cancel anytime. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking on the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. tails. I mean, here's the thing. The Cardinals are going to make moves. Okay? And the Cardinals, this is the thing that I've been yearning for in my, 15 years almost in sports media here in Phoenix. And while there were blips, moments in time where this was the case, overwhelmingly, it wasn't. Where the Arizona Cardinals, as an organization, on the field, between the lines, and outside of it, have shown enough to gain momentum and interest from free agents to sign here when it's not a Terrell Suggs signing, it's a J.J. Watt signing. And J.J. Watt wanted to play here. He could have got that money elsewhere. And sure, living in Arizona, things like that, I get. But J.J. Watt wanted to be here. Zach Ertz really enjoyed being here, I guess, for the most part, until we see, whatever is going on over in Washington. But the momentum, that's what the Cardinals showed last year. And it wasn't great. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't great for the entire year. It was really good for like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, which is a lot better than what it's been. But that momentum, showing that things are different from Jonathan Gannon, Nick Rowlis, Drew Petzing, Monti Ossenfort, how the organization is being run, how the organization is drafting, how the organization is allocating funds, the product on the field, all of it. That's the momentum necessary to get players like Josh Sweat to want to come play here because of the product, not just because of the paycheck. And Josh Sweat isn't going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, okay? But he's a really, really good pass rusher in a world that if you don't have one, you're not going to compete. And the Cardinals don't have one. We'll see what happens with B.J. Ojulari, what they do in the draft, where Darius Robinson lines up. Stephen Collins is an afterthought at this point, as he was never a thought. He's been an afterthought, unfortunately, for the most part of his career. The momentum being built, that's what made 2024 so important. They showed that proof of concept, compounding with 2023, which, everybody said, the Cardinals were a lot better than a 4-win team, even though their record doesn't, or even though their roster doesn't show that. So with that, that's why, the Cardinals are in a better position now to sign free agents because their product is better from the top down. I'd say from Monti Ossenfort down. Gardner Minshew was notified by the Raiders that he was going to be released. They're probably going to make a bigger move at quarterback, draft one, whatever it is. So the Cardinals sign him. I talked about this, I believe, at the end of the season when the season ended. That's usually when the end of the season is. The Cardinals need an upgraded backup quarterback. And Gardner Minshew is not an above-average quarterback. At times, he's not an average quarterback. But what we've seen over the course of the last 5 years, quarterbacks get injured. It's wild. Like, remember when Tom Brady tore his ACL week 1? It was a long time ago, whatever. Then Matt Castle came in. It's like, oh no, the quarterbacks can actually get hurt. Like, it's the craziest thing. Like, we've seen such an uptick in quarterback injuries as of late. And it's been a thing naturally, especially, mobile quarterbacks. But like, maybe it's just a false memory, but like, I remember like when Brett Favre was playing, he never missed games. Peyton Manning never missed games. He was out, and Tom Brady never missed games. Drew Brees, he missed games here and there, but he never really missed games. He was always injured, but he never missed games. It's like, now you need a solid backup quarterback. As I say, this is my line that I say here, to be 70% of what your starting quarterback is. And I think, Gardner Minshew specifically, I think it needs to be discussed because there are fewer and far between backup quarterbacks you can absolutely trust to spot start for 2 weeks. And I think in this offense, where it's so focused on running the ball and so focused on play action and really more regimented than whatever the hell was going on in Indy, whatever the hell was going on in Vegas, Jacksonville, like Gardner Minshew played really well when he was in Philly. And I think that he's a guy who you could bring in. He can huck it when need be. But I feel like with Drew Petzing's reins on him and this offense, I think he could produce at a level that you'd need a backup quarterback to produce if Kyler Murray were to miss time next year. And also, he checks another fantastic box of he's never going to take the starting role, which is, it's something like inherently you want that out of a backup quarterback. Like when Andy Dalton signed with Carolina and they were having issues with Bryce Young, it's like, oh yeah, Andy Dalton should 100% be starting. That's not this. But Gardner Minshew has shown enough in his career to be able to hold a clipboard. He's great for the locker room. He's a super eccentric guy. Doesn't seem to take life too seriously, which is great. You need guys like that. I think he'd be a great culture fit. And he'd be a guy who, if Kyler Murray were to miss time, which again, you never hope for, could come in and spot start. And I think it could be a lot worse. Now, there's going to be other quarterbacks who get cut. There's going to be other quarterbacks who will become free agents, of course. Like, I don't think the Cardinals should bring in Justin Fields, something like that. Like, that's too close. It's too close. This is Kyler Murray's kind of last shot here. And I'm not saying last shot like, oh, you're gone if they don't go 17-0 and win a Super Bowl. But this is the year where he's going to be under the microscope the most. So you bring in a guy who, if Kyler Murray were to miss time, could produce at 70, 75% of the level at times of what Kyler Murray does. You run an offense that's super basic for a backup quarterback to run. This is This is an offense that Colt McCoy would have absolutely thrived in 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Same thing with Gardner Minshew. He could do it. He's a little bit more of a wild card than Colt McCoy was, but listen, they need to upgrade. I think it's time they do it. You bring in a guy for a 2-year deal, and you see what happens. Is drafting a quarterback at 16 overall something that the Cardinals should 100% be looking at? As we start to see very smart minds mocking 16 with the CB position, is it something the Cardinals should actually really do a deep dive in? I'll discuss that next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. So listen, backup quarterback isn't like on top of the triage list by any means, but I also think that they're in a position now where they can really just manicure this to exactly what they want the roster to be. Okay. They know what their strengths are. They know what their weaknesses are. They know, and by weaknesses, I mean like grave weaknesses, like obviously pass rush, interior defensive line. Everybody, like, I get that. But they've also got the wiggle room here to throw, $5 million over 2 years or $4 million over 2 years to a backup quarterback like Gardner Minshew to kind of solidify that also. You can do everything in one offseason. There are very small things that need to be done. They're massively important, but it's so confined into they need this, they need this, they need this. Could use this for bolstering, but they absolutely need this, this, and this. And that's great. That's what chunking down from a terrible roster that was only retained 45% of the players that Monti Ossenfort took over to where they are now. It seems like it's slower than it should be, but it's not, in my opinion, at least. Is drafting a cornerback at 16 something the Cardinals should seriously consider? There's two top corners that could go before the Cardinals. Will Johnson was the one that was mocked by Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus to the Cardinals. 16 corner out of Michigan, plays outside, would be that true bona fide outside CB1 to partner with Max Milton, Garrett Williams. What I think, even though I do think 16 should be an offensive lineman, okay, not reaching for anybody, but I do think that 16 should be offensive lineman. I'm not going to continue to hammer that home. I've been talking about that. But what I said yesterday, and what I think should be the thought process going through this draft process is, if it's any position on defense outside of safety, you could talk me into it. And then offensive line, you can't really talk me into wide receiver here. Like, that's it. You can't talk me into wide receiver. Any position on defense outside of safety plus offensive line, I'm listening. Because if you want, and I'd probably off-ball linebacker. I mean, probably you don't want to bring in an inside linebacker at 16 where you can get them later in the draft, especially with how deep the draft is between 20 and 70 is what is what the big time pundits are saying, and I trust them. You can talk me into it. Now, if they draft a corner, which would be one of the top 2 corners in this draft, you're looking at a situation where the cornerback room could be top 5, top 7, which is wild. It's a wild flip from what we've seen. I think, do I put a period there with the Arizona Cardinals? Like, Antonio Cromartie and Patrick Peterson was the last time, I think it was 2014, the last time the Cardinals had a bona fide CB1 and CB2 on the same roster. Think about it. That's bonkers. That's over a decade. So if you want to throw 16 and really solidify that cornerback room for the next 5 years, do it. I'm in. I don't care. Whatever pick is made needs to be a pick that will make this roster better next year. And let me explain. And that's obvious, okay? Let me explain. And I talked about this yesterday. I talk about this every time I bring up the offensive line at 16. The reason being, you could compare the offensive line to the cornerback room pretty much flawlessly. If you draft Will Johnson or whatever corner at 16, he's cocooned around a room that's so close to actually being elite that it won't be on him to carry that weight. If he does, Cardinals win. That's fantastic. But he doesn't have to because Garrett Williams is there. He doesn't have to because he's got the help from Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson over the top. He doesn't have to. Same with the offensive line. With the interior defensive line, if you draft an interior defensive lineman and don't bring in another veteran star or whatever star potential level, you're asking a rookie to carry the brunt of the weight of a terrible room, talent-wise, outside of like Dante Stills. And we'll see where Darius Robinson lines up for the majority of the time in 2025. That's the difference. So you could talk me into the cornerback at 16. There are few sexier things in football than a very, very good defense. The Cardinals are so much closer than people think. And I don't know why it's not more of a streamlined thought, why it's not more of a thought that people have. They're ready to rock. They're 2 pieces away. I saw some comments yesterday saying they're further away. I don't see it. I think they're 2 pieces away. And they could get 4 pieces in free agency in the draft combined this year, and they could be an elite top 10 defense next year. They're not far off. And they've got all their guys in line for the next handful of years. It is a borderline perfect situation if they can execute that final step of adding some talent this offseason, which you can't help but think they will, whether it be free agency or the draft. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.